Imagine being just 14 years old, bored with your ordinary life, desperate to grow up, and secretly searching for an identity you haven't even discovered yet. Now imagine it's 2006, a time when the internet was still mysterious, chat rooms were full of strangers, and a simple online conversation could completely change the way a teenager saw the world. Big Girls Don't Cry takes us into that confusing, emotional, sometimes awkward phase of growing up and turns one ordinary summer into a deeply personal coming-of-age journey. The story takes place in rural New Zealand in the summer of 2006 and follows 14-year-old Sid Bookman, a girl standing awkwardly between childhood and adulthood. Sid spends her summer feeling bored and disconnected. Her father, Leo, cares about her but is often distracted, while her older sister Adele has returned from university with her free-spirited American friend Freya. Sid becomes fascinated by Freya and the older teenagers around her. To Sid, they seem confident, exciting, and grown up, everything she wants to become. Sid's closest friend is Tia, but their friendship begins to change as Sid becomes increasingly interested in the older crowd. Through her brother's chat history, Sid discovers online chat rooms and begins secretly communicating with older girls. The internet becomes a place where she can experiment with different versions of herself and explore feelings she doesn't fully understand. As the summer continues, Sid starts making increasingly reckless choices. She steals alcohol from her father so she can impress the older girls and tries desperately to earn a place in their group. She follows them to parties, hangs around older boys, and pretends to have more romantic and sexual experience than she actually does. But being accepted by the older crowd isn't as exciting as Sid imagined. At one party, Adele becomes angry when she realizes that Sid has been following her and her friends. Instead of feeling like a cool older sister, Adele treats Sid as an annoying kid who doesn't belong in their world. Freya, however, takes a little more interest in Sid. She becomes someone she looks up to, almost like a role model. But Freya is also young and struggling with her own mistakes, which slowly teaches Sid that the people she admires aren't as confident or perfect as they appear. Throughout the summer, Sid wrestles with her identity. She is trying to understand who she is attracted to, how she wants others to see her, and where she belongs. Sometimes she makes selfish decisions, sometimes she lies, sometimes she hurts people without realizing it. Yet beneath all of those mistakes is a lonely teenager who simply wants to be understood and accepted. The relationship between Sid and Tia also becomes increasingly complicated. Sid's obsession with becoming part of the older crowd causes distance between the two friends, making Sid realize that chasing popularity means losing the people who genuinely care about you. Meanwhile, Sid's father struggles to understand what is happening in his daughter's life. He isn't cruel or uncaring, he's simply distracted and unable to see how quickly Sid is changing. As summer begins to disappear, Sid is left facing the consequences of her choices. She hasn't suddenly become an adult, and she hasn't discovered all the answers she's been searching for. Instead, she has learned something much more important. Growing up isn't about becoming someone else. It's about slowly discovering who you are. The film ends without a traditional dramatic resolution. Summer ends, and Sid moves forward with all her confusion, mistakes, memories, and newfound awareness. Big Girls Don't Cry is ultimately a quiet coming-of-age story about friendship, identity, first attraction, the early internet, and the messy process of growing up. It shows that becoming an adult isn't one dramatic moment, it's a collection of small experiences that gradually change you. One of the movie's most interesting elements is its portrayal of early internet culture. Remember, this is 2006, a time when online chat rooms and anonymous conversations could feel like an entirely different universe. Sid uses the internet to experiment with different versions of herself, communicate secretly, and explore feelings she doesn't know how to express in real life. And the film handles this surprisingly well. Instead of turning the internet into some exaggerated villain, Big Girls Don't Cry shows it as a fascinating space where teenagers could experiment with identity, friendship, attraction, and confidence. Some moments are funny and awkward, while others reveal just how vulnerable a young person can be when trying to find acceptance. Director Paloma Schneideman keeps the storytelling relatively simple, but the atmosphere is one of the film's biggest strengths. The warm summer landscapes of rural New Zealand create this beautiful contrast with Sid's increasingly complicated inner world. Everything around her looks peaceful, yet inside her mind, everything is changing. Visually, the movie has a natural, almost intimate quality. The camera often feels like it is quietly observing Sid, rather than forcing us to judge her choices. There are moments that carry a subtle Jane Campion-like influence, particularly in the way the film explores isolation, identity, relationships, and the emotional landscape of young women. And then we have the performances. Ani Palmer gives the film its emotional center as Sid. Her performance captures the awkwardness, curiosity, insecurity, and impulsiveness of a teenager who desperately wants to be treated like an adult while still figuring out what being an adult actually means. Noah Taylor is also excellent as Sid's father, Leo. He feels caring but distracted, a parent who loves his daughter but doesn't always understand what she needs emotionally. Rain Spencer brings a different energy as Freya, while the supporting cast helps create a believable teenage world around Sid. That said, the movie isn't perfect. The narrative is deliberately simple, and some story beats can feel predictable. A few conversations between the younger characters occasionally sound more like adults writing teenagers rather than teenagers naturally talking to each other. Some of the darker scenes also suffer from uneven lighting. But despite those flaws, the movie succeeds where it matters most. It understands that growing up isn't a clean journey. Sometimes you make a mistake, learn something from it, and then immediately make another mistake. Sometimes you desperately want to belong somewhere even when you know those people aren't necessarily good for you. And sometimes you don't even understand your own feelings until much later. That's exactly what makes Sid such an interesting character. Big Girls Don't Cry doesn't give us some huge dramatic ending where every problem is magically solved. Instead, the story simply moves forward as the summer comes to an end. Sid hasn't figured everything out, and that's the point. Because growing up doesn't happen in one summer. It happens through mistakes, awkward moments, heartbreak, curiosity, friendship, confusion, and those tiny experiences that slowly change the way we see ourselves. Overall, Big Girls Don't Cry is a warm, honest, sometimes uncomfortable, but ultimately heartfelt coming-of-age drama. It may not reinvent the genre, but it brings enough personality, atmosphere, and emotional honesty to make the journey worth watching. If you enjoy quiet, coming-of-age stories, character-driven dramas, teenage self-discovery, nostalgic 2000s settings, and emotionally realistic storytelling, this one could definitely be worth checking out. So, what do I think? Big Girls Don't Cry is not a loud or over-the-top movie. It's a small story about a very big moment in someone's life, and sometimes those are the stories that stay with you the longest. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to CheezeDrama for more upcoming movie updates, honest reviews, explanations, and exciting cinema content. Until the next movie, keep watching, keep exploring, and keep supporting CheezeDrama.